Thank you very much indeed. Good morning. It is 9:30 a.m. on a Thursday. My name is Darren Sanders. I'm the Liberal Democrat member for Baffins, North Milton and South Copner. I'm also the Cabinet member for Housing and Tackling Homelessness. Before I begin, I have to do some housekeeping and safety information, which is if the continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room, public gallery by the stairwells, don't use the lifts. Please assemble at the turning circle at the end of King Henry Street past the University's Park building. In order to comply with the Guildhall Trust fire marshal regulations, anyone who's signed in at the Guildhall reception desk should sign out when leaving the building at the end of today's meeting. As far as live web streaming is concerned, may I draw everyone's attention to the fact that this meeting will be live streamed. Hello there. Everyone speaking via a microphone will be on camera, including any deputations. We do not have any verbal deputations. For people on the live stream, the drone that you hear is not a drone, but is in fact drilling work here at the Guildhall. As this is a workplace, if it gets intolerable for the people here who are the workers, I will call a break. Members of the press and public are also permitted to record the meeting on the understanding that neither disrupts the meeting nor records those stating explicitly that they do not wish to be recorded. This is available on catch-up. Please can everyone use the microphones and remember to switch them off when they have finished. So I will now continue by going around the room, starting with Alison on my far left.
Alison Harper from Democratic Services.
Thank you.
Alan Denford, Finance Manager for Housing.
James Hill, Director of Housing, Neighbourhood and Building Services.
Jo Bennett, Assistant Director, Housing Need and Supply.
Shane Galvin, Housing Policy and Quality Manager.
That's lovely, Shane. You may need to put the microphone just a bit nearer you. I'm
better?
Too close, but yours is much better. Daniel,
okay.
Good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning. Councillor Daniel Weems, Hillsey Ward.
Thank you. Cal.
Councillor Cal Corkery, Opposition Spokesperson for Housing.
And my two colleagues in the front row.
Councillor Graham Heaney, Deputy Leader of the Labour Group, standing in for Councillor Charlotte Gerardo.
Councillor Roman Dent, Copner Ward.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. I have no normal apologies for absence. A gentleman called Trevor from the Residents Consortium, Trevor Lovett, may be late attending. So we'll do it from there. For councillors, is there anything to declare? No, right, okay, that's fine. So we have one item here today, which is the merged homelessness strategy from 2024 to 2029. How I propose to do this is to allow the officers to introduce it. We then have a written deputation from the Portsmouth and District Private Landlords Association, which I will ask Alison from Democratic Services to read out verbatim. And then my opposition colleagues will then be able to answer comments and questions, as well as the Residents Consortium if Trevor is here on time, and then I will sum up. I hope that's reasonably clear. If not, please yell. Who begins? I believe it is Jo. Good morning.
Good morning. The report looks to ask for approval for the Council's homelessness strategy from 24 to 29 and its associated appendix, including an action plan. The local authority has been required to formulate and publish a homelessness strategy based on a review of homelessness in the area, and this has to be done at least every 5 years. The previous homelessness strategy covered the period 18 to 23, and there are details within the report of the review and how this has taken place. The review needs to consider the level of homelessness, the activities which are carried out, and also the resources available to carry out such activities. The work has included the Portsmouth City Rough Sleeping and Homelessness Partnership Group, who have worked together to carry out the review and to develop an ambitious strategy which calls on the partnership approach to preventing homelessness and ending rough sleeping. Although there is a statutory requirement for this strategy, Portsmouth has looked to bring together the street homelessness and rough sleeping strategy along with the homelessness strategy so that we can move forward with one joint strategy coming forward. The review work has included a consultation of those people who have experience of homelessness or being threatened with homelessness, and that consultation has also included colleagues from key partner agencies, including social care, etc., and also providers. The draft strategy then looked to... Sorry. The objectives of the final stage of the consultation were to assess levels of agreement to the 5 draft strategy aims and to assess the recommendations within that. The consultation results are then detailed, as are the themes of the new strategy, which are to prevent homelessness, end rough sleeping, provide the right housing to relieve homelessness, provide the right support and to strengthen collaborative working. Governance and oversight of the strategy is detailed within the report.
Was that it, Joe? Thank you very much indeed, Joe. Alison, could you please read out Mr. Silman's deputation verbatim, please?
Okay, so I would like to make the following written deputation at tomorrow's Housing Cabinet, please. The PDPLA have always supported efforts by Portsmouth City Council to reduce and to tackle homelessness in the local area. The overall strategy and its obvious intent are to be commended, but we fear that many of the strategic aims are no more than good words which hide a muddled and uncoordinated approach. 5.11 aims to prevent homelessness, yet PCC have reduced housing stock for the most in need by removing over 1,000 rooms from HMOs in the city, by forcing many to reduce from 5 or 6 beds to 4 due to the onerous and inappropriate communal living space requirements that came with the updated mandatory licensing regime several years ago. 5.13 provide the right housing. PCC's additional licensing has driven hundreds more HMOs out of the local market. Where are you going to house all these single people now you have massively increased the problem you seek to solve? 5.15, strengthen collaborative working. Sorry, but you have lost the support of local landlords. It really is time Portsmouth City Council stopped concentrating on saying the right words and ticking boxes and did something that improves the situation.
Thank you, Alison. Also, please thank Mr. Silman as well for that. We're very grateful. We have 2 new people who've turned up. Good morning. Good morning. There's no need to apologise. It's all right. All we need is just for the live streaming that we're doing. What are your 2 names? Firstly, you, my love, in the front row. Amanda Buxley, and you're from where, Amanda? Oh, we like you already. That's absolutely fantastic. I believe you're with the Residents Consortium. Is that correct? Okay, that's fine. We'll come to you in a bit, if that's okay. And hello, you at the back. No need to apologise. You're keeping an eye on her. Or she's keeping an eye on you. Or which one is it? I'm aware of that, and I've already told the meeting, Heidi. That's lovely, thank you. I'm sure the Democratic Services will note that. So, thank you very much indeed. So what I will do is I will now ask each of the, some of the political reps and then the Residents Consortium for their comments about our merged homelessness strategy before I sum up. I'll start with Cal. Cal, please.
Thank you, Darren. Useful report, I think, to update us on what the current position is. I think it's worth noting how much things have changed over the vast periods. I know we're looking forward here, but obviously from kind of pre-COVID to now, it's a very different landscape in terms of provision of homelessness services within the city. There's clearly been a significant expansion of services, and in particular, a lot more beds available in kind of supported housing type setups, I think typically known as the rough sleeper pathway. And I know there's been a lot of work and kind of hard work and toil that's gone into that, so it's very much appreciated, and I think something to be recognised and praised. I've got a few questions just about kind of particular aspects of the strategy, and I guess services more generally that that strategy oversees. The first is a question about the strategy, but also services more generally. In terms of service user engagement, I know obviously there's been a consultation alongside this report that did engage service users within that process, but I just wondered, to what extent there is further ongoing engagement of service users within the provision of those services and how they develop. I know from previously being involved in the Rough Sleeper partnership boards that there was usually one person who used to come along and get involved that had kind of lived experience of using those services. But I know that I think that they were moving area. I don't know, I'm a little bit out of the loop with that board, whether there's been someone else brought in or whether there's a kind of alternative arrangement which gives people kind of living in those services and who previously lived in those services the opportunity to get kind of more actively involved than just responding to a consultation.
I mean, Joe, feel free to answer questions either as we go along from political colleagues or if they want to answer it all in one go, all in one go. But I think this one deserves probably an individual a response regardless.
So the lived experience of a person on the partnership board was very valuable, as you know, Councillor Corkery, and it is something that we've attempted to replicate within the new strategy and the new partnership board. There is a focus to be placed on experience of those living within services so that we can co-produce and design how we move forward. We've been working with partners who provide pathways of accommodation to work out how best to bring forward that voice, and there are a few models that we've been looking at. Sharon George has been looking at that recently. We're looking to launch the partnership at the January meeting, and at that point we would lay out how that would work, but we definitely want to encourage those with lived experience to be part of the work and the design.
Okay, Cal, do you have any more comments or questions at all? Feel free if you do.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Thanks, Joe. One more question in terms of, I guess, the different cohorts of service users that we're trying to meet the needs of through this strategy. I talked about the kind of expansion of the supported housing model, or however you want to frame it. I guess I'm talking about the registry and the places on Elmgrove. There's a lot more bed spaces for people who are able to go into that kind of environment, which is typically a kind of a building with a number of other service users, perhaps some shared facilities, perhaps kind of their own private facilities, but very much within supported housing, what might have previously been referred to as a hostel type setup. And that's great for people who are able to live in that environment and are able to kind of develop their independent living skills and then move on. But clearly there's always going to be a cohort of people to whom that doesn't meet their needs, and probably that they're going to be the most vulnerable or the most chaotic or the most challenging, the people that really need the most help perhaps, but for one reason or other unable or unwilling to go and live in a kind of shared supported housing environment. So I'm just curious, I guess, about, and clearly this isn't a new issue, it's been always an issue in homeless services, about how the strategy and the homeless services more generally provide for that cohort of people for whom the accommodation of the type of the registry isn't suitable, or they're kind of unwilling for various often good reasons to go and live in that environment.
Joe, do you want to respond to that, please?
Thank you. You're absolutely right. Every person that we try to support is an individual with different needs. One of the challenges of supported housing is being able to provide support alongside accommodation, and doing that in an individual property can be quite tricky. A number of people with a high support need 24/7 support, and that's quite difficult in individual premises. We do now have one block which has individual units, so self-contained premises, which is part of our supported temporary accommodation, which can be used to suit either those who have come through the housing needs front door, or also those who are trying to move on to independent accommodation. But there is always a challenge between providing support and independent accommodation, and one of those things is in finding buildings that have the right facilities available to be able to support people. So we will continue to track all of our different cohorts and try and respond in a housing supply way to what's needed. One of the things within the strategy talks about sufficiency of accommodation, but also the right type of accommodation and the right type of support, and that is the focus for us in trying to make sure that we give people the facilities they need to live well, but also the support they need to sustain tenancy. So there will be additional models of accommodation needed across the strategy period.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Cheers. Thank you, Cal. Ray.
Yeah, it's exactly the same as last time. Cows, I already asked one question I had.
That is allowed.
This
This is a free country, they tell us.
I think I need to speak to him beforehand to see which questions he's coming up with.
Well, okay, that's fine. I'll arrange a meeting for you next time. Anything else, Ray? You're fine as you are. Okay, thank you. Amanda, from the Residents' Consortium, do you have any issues or questions you wanted to raise about this? Feel free to ask what you like. No. That's great, thank you. Graham.
Just you use the regular members first, because I'm essentially the sort of late guest, and I might have some questions which would get answered, so I prefer you.
You're valued member here, and I'm actually doing it in order of number of seats on the council, so therefore you are next to anybody. But however, I know that you want to go higher, so that's fine. So I'll go to Daniel, if that's okay.
Thank you, Darren. I think combining the strategy is a really good idea in terms of resource for the council and allocating that resource in the most efficient way. I have one question. It relates to basically in 2022, a quarter of homeless applications basically were withdrawn, and it mentions in the report that having a better staff allocation of resources would be really beneficial. I just wondered, Joe, if you could answer what kind of allocation that would be. Would it be boots on the ground, or indeed maybe new technology to better facilitate communication with service users? What would that look like in the coming years? Because obviously a 5-year strategy is a long period of time, and we don't know what will happen in that 5-year period. I mean, the last one had a pandemic. At the moment, we've got a cost of living crisis, and indeed, who knows what's going to happen in the coming months, let alone in the coming years. So I just wondered what that staff allocation will look like as we move forward.
Thank you. The point you made first about the number of people who withdraw their applications is really difficult for us. What we end up with is a started piece of work. So someone approaches us at a point of crisis and then they lose contact. The staff try very, very hard to re-establish contact over a prolonged period. And in a number of cases are able to get hold of someone who will tell us what's happened and why they've moved away. But I think one of the pieces to really focus on there is what the consultation taught us, that people are coming to us because they want a property, not advice. And I think one of the things that we have to do is to focus our efforts on the prevention of homelessness. And what we want to see is that focus of staffing, so that our prevention work is there to allow people to sustain tenancy and to not lose their home in the first place. A system that is based on people only coming to us once things are past our capacity to help is not going to move forward productively. So what we want to see, you'll have noticed a reference to the Prevention Hub, and what the Prevention Hub seeks to do is to bring together the services that people need to prevent their homelessness, and those are the kind of changes that I envisage seeing across the 5-year period, that we move into a way that people find it easier to access service, that they don't put it off, that they come to us at an early indication, and that service and advice is available to them so that we can do more to actually prevent rather than just reacting to homelessness. I think that's will be our key focus. There have also been the development of roles around understanding the support needs. So the piece around supported housing, we've created an ISHA role, Independent Supported Housing Assessors, and what they ensure is when we take an application for someone and they need accommodation, that they get the right support with that application. So it's a different change of focus to making sure people have earlier advice and also the support assessment that they need.
Dan, does that answer your questions?
Yes, I've got one more.
Oh, please feel free, yes.
Yeah, sorry. No, that's really good, Joe, especially where prevention is one of the best forms of stopping people obviously having to access a service later on. I think having that open door policy is really good as well, where you know they don't just, I mean, often in crises you don't reach out to people. So if we can, as a council, can have that ability to make sure that they know that they can come to us and actually get that advice early on, and then obviously it doesn't spiral out of control. One more question. In terms of collaborating with other authorities, especially our neighbours, how are we doing in that? So in the sense of a lot of, sometimes we have like transient people where they maybe they come to Portsmouth, have an issue and they try and access a property, and then they might move somewhere else for a small period of time. In terms of tracking, how do we communicate with other local authorities? We
hold a forum so that we can talk to our colleagues, and I have monthly meetings with a number of close neighbours, as does Shane and Sharon George, our current head of service. We also have a comparator organisation pool which has been created for us by DLUC, so that we meet with people who are in similar place to us, either with population or with size, so that we can learn from each other. So we do a lot of cross-council working. In terms of tracking people, that cohort that move around, our rough sleeping navigators are really key to understanding where someone is. Part of our outreach programme is about understanding if someone's safe by going to where they are if they don't want to come into accommodation. And so they tend to have a group where they meet weekly and they discuss where people have gone, what's happened with them, they follow them up. We give people phones that are funded so that we can make contact with people who we might otherwise lose. So there's a lot of work to understand. We were talking yesterday actually about a case where someone is moving around the area and keeps rotating and not engaging. So, and then we do a piece of joined up work with those other authorities to try and deal with the problem.
Dan, did you have any further questions? Nope, that's fine. Now, Graham. You better have
Thank
some
you.
after all that.
Yes, I do actually. Obviously, as you know, I'm only standing in for Charlotte because she's on maternity leave, and I only got access to the papers after I made a contact on Monday because these weren't sent to me and I wasn't notified of the papers until then. So I've only had a limited amount of time to read what's a very detailed report with a lot of information in it. And obviously I hadn't been involved in the earlier meeting where you did the draft, etc. So I've been a lot of catching up. So some of the questions will probably be about me getting a bit of better understanding on what's going on, but also in a sense that it may be things you've already gone through. So apologies if I've asking questions which have already
There's
been
no need
answered.
to apologise, so feel free.
Just in relation to, I'll refer to the large page numbers at the bottom of the report so that people are not confused. So on page 22, we talk about the percentage of homeless applications and the percentage of applications that aren't prevented, and it basically says we don't do very well in getting a large number of successful preventions. Why is that? Why are we less successful in getting preventions of homelessness? What's the main barrier here to us?
Chair, can I just ask the officers to answer that question, if that's all right, Graham? No, that's fine. I may have asked that at least 27 times. So, Chair.
So it links to my kind of previous answer. One of the things that we find, and that the consultation also explained, is that people come to us past the point of trying to prevent homelessness. So they are past our capacity to end that situation. And some of the work that, on the next page, you can see the causes of homelessness. And what you'll see there is the end of private rented tenancy, friends and family no longer able to accommodate, and domestic abuse. Within those homelessness causes, there are different bits of work that you can do to prevent homelessness, but also there are causes where someone will arrive on the day and you literally need to relieve their homelessness. You can't prevent it, so a case like that would be domestic abuse, where someone comes in, doesn't feel safe to return home. We wouldn't try and encourage them to go home. We would risk assess their situation and manage it. And likewise, where someone hasn't come to us until they are very far down an eviction route, we can't actually prevent their homelessness and keep them in that property. Likewise with familial evictions, one of the pieces there is that if someone comes to us at a point where things are starting to niggle, relationships are starting to break down, we can sometimes mediate their capacity to remain in that housing. However, if situations have been allowed to go too long, before someone steps in for help, you can find that the situation is past repair, and therefore the familial and friends and family no longer wishing to accommodate can be past the point of return.
Just to follow up briefly on that, I'm just wondering if people's perception of the housing, the ability of the local authority to help is affected by people's perception of the housing waiting list, i.e. it's too long, not much chance of getting in, therefore the council can't help me. Can we do any more to sort of publicise the fact that we can actually do stuff to prevent? Are we doing as much as we can, do you think, in relation to that? Publicising that we can do things to help prevent it rather than being able to offer you something as an alternative?
No, you go first, Joe. I'll come back to those points, which are really good ones, Graham, when it's my turn, if that's all right. But Joe can answer from an implementation point of view.
You'll see within the strategy a huge focus on prevention and that prevention hub and pulling services forward. So we're looking to do more to shout about prevention. We're looking to change the point at which people access our services, and that will be one of the key focuses of the strategy coming forward.
Right, okay, I've got a question about staffing.
Graham, just one second. I can see, but you can't, that James also wishes to reply as well. Sorry about that, Graham. I know I don't have eyes in the back of my head like you, so therefore that's fine. Great, James.
Thank you, Councillor Saunders. Yeah, I just wanted to add that I think it's important to recognise that whilst PCC as a local authority holds the responsibility to publish the strategy, and indeed holds a few levers to prevent, relieve, etc., homelessness, that the strategy is about a partnership approach, and it's really important that we use the partnership board really as a call to action across a very wide system in the city to support this ambitious strategy. The local authority alone cannot actually deal with many of the aims and aspirations in the strategy. It has to be a partnership approach. I go there because it kind of links into Councillor Heaney's question about how do we promote services. That's across the whole partnership and making sure that at all points of contact, whether that's in the voluntary and community sector or with the local authority, that we have in place the information that enables those officers, those members of public, members, councillors of the City Council, the ability to recognise the need at the point of that contact and signpost or refer through to appropriate services. So my opportunity just to come back to the partnership and the call to action and how that can play a part in spreading what we can do in terms of providing services and help and support.
That's very helpful. That gives a better picture than just reading the words. In a sense, I've got a sense of explaining how it works. That's good. The other question I was going to ask was around staffing. On page 27, there's reference to extra staff being recruited, and then it talks about clearly too great, the applications are too great for the current size of the assessment team, and then it goes on to talk about further works there. And I'm not sure whether this is the problem continuing despite the fact we've actually increased staff, or the increased staff are going to tackle the problem. That paragraph slightly confused me. So which way round is it? Have we increased the staff and it's made it better, or have we increased the staff and it hasn't made it much better because there's still too heavy a caseload?
I hate to use these words for you, Graham, but I believe there is a third way. Joe, if you could explain.
So we increased the staffing and the demand got bigger. So although it did help, more people came through the door again. So yes, I think that answers the question.
I told you there was a third way, Graham. Any other questions at all, or comments?
Apologies, yes, I do have some more questions. You talked on page 28 about the response to people who take advice, and it says they did not tend to, found that people who applied via the housing needs advisors did not tend to recall or focus on the benefits of any advice that was given. And I'm wondering why that was. Is it the nature of how we give that advice? I mean, obviously, you can tell somebody they can forget, or you can give somebody a bit of paper and they can lose it, or we can sometimes maybe give them the information electronically so they get access on their phones. I mean, how do we do this? What's the reason why? Is it we're not having flexible ways to provide information, or is there something else behind this?
So every applicant receives a personalised plan, which is spoken through with their case officer. They're also provided with that in writing or in any form that they need it. I think what we're alluding to here is that people aren't wanting the advice. What they're wanting is a home. And there's a reality to the finite level of social housing. And we think that, we don't know for certain, but one of the things that we're told by those who withdraw from contact is that when we've made it clear that we want to advise them that we're asking them to help solve their own problem, we've provided them with what we can do to support them to provide their own problem, that isn't always what they want.
I can understand that. Yeah, why are you following me off with this advice when I really want a home? Yeah, I can see how they may not interpret it like that. I was going to ask a more general question, actually, about the way in which we deal with homelessness applications, because obviously, going back historically, the homelessness legislation has always had this issue of intentionality as to whether people have done something that makes them homeless. And it's always been slightly contentious, because obviously it's a matter of interpretation, in a sense. And I'm just wondering how we deal with that, whether we are quite strict in our interpretation of intentionality, or whether we take a more considered view, if I can put it that way, to the issue of intentionality when people are presenting as homeless.
Thank you. We're aware, and I think the expansion that Councillor Corkery talked about with the rough sleeping pathway, if someone is intentionally homeless, they're still going to be in our city. They're still going to need a roof. They're still going to be part of our service. So having a priority and a non-priority and non-statutory pathway allows us to think more about how we move someone forward, regardless of intentionality. And I think we're very lucky in having a capacity to do that. So it isn't the end of a journey for us, intentionality. We've also got a lot of work that we do with children's social care for those who have children who might be intentionally homeless, and also for younger people who might be intentionally homeless. So there are things within our protocols that mean that we always focus on the housing solution rather than the legal decision. There is a requirement to make a legal decision, but that isn't the end of the conversation.
And also, Graham, running parallel to that, we are very keen as a Lib Dem administration to ease the transition between children's social care and adult social care, which in parallel to all this will make that journey, for want of a better cliche, much easier. So it's something we're very aware of.
I'm conscious that I don't want to keep people here too long, so I'll leave that as far as the main questions go. I just want to ask one question about the deputation. There was a claim in the deputation made that the PCC have reduced housing stock for most indeed by removing over 1,000 homes from HMOs in the city. Does anyone know whether that claim is valid or not? Or have we not had time to check it? I mean, I understand if we've only just received it, you may not know, but that's a claim being made, and I'm just wondering if we recognise that claim at all.
I think you got us on the word valid.
That's what I was asking.
That was an interesting one. I mean,
Yeah,
all claims are valid. Whether they're true or not is a different story. James, do you want to answer that or not?
Well, I think the honest answer is we have no way of validating that. I don't doubt that there's been shifts and changes in the overall housing market over a number of years due to many factors, but no, that particular point, I've no way of confirming or validating that particular claim.
Is that all right, Graham? That's fine. And all the while you are the acting housing spokesperson for the Labour Party, feel free to have briefings with officers about anything. And I'm not allowed to know what they are, which is a good thing, if that's all right. If no one else has got anything else, then I think it's sort of my turn, really. So firstly, thanks to everyone for their comments today. Just an explanation for those on the web stream as to why we're doing this, which is that for us, giving people a place to live is one of the most important things you can do, and that's never true when they don't have one. I think one of the things that we've overlooked today in our discussions is that across the country, councils are reporting a crisis in homelessness, with more people coming through the doors, having been kicked out, more people on the streets, and as Daniel alluded to earlier, that's one of the most visible outcomes of the cost of living crisis. For us, I think having one homeless person here in Portsmouth is one too many, and as we've discussed with Graham's questions, the reasons for it are many and varied, and that's why when my lot resumed running Portsmouth 5 years ago, we wanted to make sure people were treated as individual human beings rather than a blob. Since then, as Cal alluded to earlier, the position has been transformed. We're now seen as one of the best, Portsmouth is now seen as one of the best city places in the country for tackling rough sleeping, in particular because we've got a plan to build council housing. We've got a multi-agency cross-party group overseeing how we deal with the homeless in this city, and after this meeting I'm going to ask the various group leaders for nominations for that. Every party at the moment sits on it, but I now realise we've got 5 groups, I hope I've got that right, plus Judith, who sits on her own, who's done some fantastic work on the cross-party group. So we're going to have to see how we can get through that to encourage political representation as well as political representation. We have also brought back more than 500 new council homes. We have provided safe and secure accommodation for rough sleepers. A resident asked me earlier on the week whether we were providing pods in car parks. Because Herefordshire does it, and I was proud to say no, because there are no pods in car parks here. We've actually got, as Joe has alluded to earlier, real navigators who don't just tell people where to go and what to talk to Citizens Advice Bureau, but actually help them get back on their feet. I'm delighted to say we've now got a way to give the homes bank accounts, which is absolutely crucial in terms of making sure they can have jobs. And we've also got navigators to deal with those leaving prison and also those rough sleepers who shoplift regularly. We know that business crime is a problem in our city, and they've made a significant boost to that. So that's a radical programme. As Cal says, we're light years away from where we were pre-pandemic. But blockages still occur. There's still a legal distinction between rough sleepers, or as government calls them, non-priority homeless, and everyone else who comes through our doors. There's still different pots of funding that we have to allocate for the non-priority homeless and the priority homeless. That's bad. We're delighted that the government wants to end rough sleeping, but only recently did we actually know what that meant on the ground. That's good, but it has taken a while. We are also aware that the government has only just increased the local housing allowance for the first time in 3, 4, 5 years. That's great, but rents have gone up by more. And I think that's one of the issues behind what the landlords were saying earlier. So many things we can't control, but this strategy is an honest look at what we can and try and build something that meets the needs of the future, not the past. And crucial to that is prevention. I think, following up Graham's point, too few people genuinely don't tell us early enough. And they come to us when they've got a Section 21 notice and they're about to be evicted. That's not their fault, but it is one of the reasons why we're, in this statement, we're not doing as well as we should do. And 3/5 of the people on our waiting list, Graham, rent privately. And that percentage is much higher for those people who need 1- and 2-bedroom flats. And the biggest causes of homelessness in our city are people being kicked out by friends, family, or a private landlord. And it's on that basis that I want to come to the landlord's deputation earlier. We take, I certainly take the comments seriously, especially about the process. They know our door is always open for them, as it is for tenants and neighbours, and they can walk through it at any time. I was interested to read that we've told we've lost their support, yet dozens of landlords, like dozens of tenants, have joined our licensing forums, which we've set up around the additional licensing programme we have introduced. I was also interested that landlords say that Lib Dem policies are cutting HMOs. I've not heard of 1,000. I've heard of 368, but I've not heard of 1,000. I have to say, as anyone who's, talked to people across the city, the prospect of any party cutting HMOs would cheer them up no end, I have to say, because of the anger that exists for them. But the evidence suggests otherwise. The steady stream of HMO applications we all see applying for planning permission each week is not a mirage. The 8 applications, 8 HMOs the planning committee approved yesterday was not some sort of psychedelic dream. Indeed, I have to say the only homes the committee rejected yesterday were council ones, which was a source of mild interest to me. But we do want to crack down on bad landlords. Now, the landlords regularly complain, and I understand that, about the space standards that we have. But that's because too many people on our waiting list say they don't want to rent privately because they're worried the quality of the home will be poor, the landlord won't do the work they need, and then get kicked out at any time. We've got to change that fear. And changing that fear is vital to cutting homelessness, and that is why we will do all we can to improve standards so that we can prevent them. As I said to Cal, we are light years away, and your point about service users is something that's really, really important for us, because what we don't want is a bunch of people who've got no idea what it's like to sleep rough or be homeless doing policies. That's wrong, and that's why we want to try and move away from it. Daniel, I think your comments about extra people were excellent, and it's one of the reasons we've put it in there. It, of course, will be subject to a cost-benefit analysis. I think one of the problems we've faced in terms of policies, all councils face this across the country, is that very often we're looking at the end rather than the start. And certainly if extra staff can save money, and so cut the overspends, which means we can start to cut the council tax, which is difficult to do at present, then we will be in a very good position. And that's why we want to focus on prevention, because we want to make sure that we don't spend too much of people's council taxpayers' money on things we shouldn't spend on. We have also peer-reviewed our approach with Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole Council and Southampton as well, and the action plan has been peer-reviewed by a charity called Homelessness. So there has been a sense that we have talked to people. Southampton's view was, it was lovely and you're doing what we're doing anyway, which is absolutely beautiful. I think, Graham, one of the issues for doing this strategy is all in your questions, is we know we've got problems. But you know, Graham, that we're not alone. Because councils have been lobbying government like, regardless of party, been lobbying government like it's no one's business to try and change these things. But we do want to change in terms of allocation policies, changing the pathway so that we get people into safe and secure accommodation rather than getting more people to have the money in, and also changing and overhauling things, as well as continuing to build and buy more council homes. So we've got a good system in our city for tackling homelessness, but we just want to make it better. Here endeth the lesson. And I am delighted to approve this strategy today. Thank you, colleagues, for coming along. If political colleagues have any further questions or comments, please feel free at any time to ask the officers or possibly even ask me. And I'm incredibly grateful to you. This is the only item on the agenda, and I close the meeting at 12 minutes past 10. Have a peaceful day, and I'm so pleased the drone didn't happen. Thank you.